Hello. Hello. This video is going to be a little bit different than what I usually post on my YouTube channel. I just thought it was something important that I wanted to make, and especially I wanted to release it before the official college admissions rush starts. So as many of you know, last year I made the decision to go back to school, and I'm currently a freshman at the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art in New York City. Last year, I applied early decision as a transfer. I was admitted, and I essentially received a full ride in merit-based and need-based scholarships. So I wanted to share how that happened for me, what the home test is like because it is completely unique to Cooper, and then I thought I'd just share my thoughts on my first semester at the end because I'm 2 weeks away from finishing my first semester. I've broken everything up into chapters, so you can just skip around however you want, but otherwise, we'll just dive right in. For those of you that don't know, Cooper has a very rigorous application policy. You basically have a month to complete 6 different prompts for art pieces. They encourage you working in many different mediums, working conceptually, putting a lot of time and effort into these pieces. It was more work than any other application I did for schools by far. I basically spent all of December, even though I had family obligations for the holidays and everything, solely working on these prompts because I really wanted to make sure that I got into the school and that I received some merit-based scholarships. So if you're watching this video, you probably know that the home test prompts change every year. And not only do they change every year, but they're different if you're applying early decision or if you're applying regular decision. So these were the prompts for the early decision home test in 2023. 1. A composition that shows a specific process of editing and remaking an image. 2. A non-automated deepfake portrait. 3. A view of your room as a ruin. 4. A sequence of images that represent a person or object moving through several real or metaphorical surfaces. 5. Fugitivity. 6. Design a board game that solves a real-world problem. I do want to say, when I show you the responses that I made for these prompts, they do not represent my art or my process. You have a month to complete 6 projects. It's not going to be your best work. And in general, I think that is something that you really need to keep in mind when you're working on these, is to let perfectionism go. And in general, as a freshman at Cooper, the pace is breakneck. You're going to have multiple assignments every week. There's no time to fixate on how things could be better or, what you want to change to make things like absolutely perfect. In general, it's kind of best to just go with like your first idea, and you should still be making work that you're proud of, but honestly, you kind of fall in love with a lot of the projects that you make as you're doing them. Overall, the admissions team and your professors at Cooper are not looking for perfection. They're looking for your ability to conceptualize and communicate. They're also looking to see multiple different mediums, as that's a major part of your foundation year. So I really recommend, not just doing one thing, like try and be interdisciplinary because Cooper really rewards that. For the first prompt, a composition that shows a specific process of editing and remaking an image. I'm Japanese, so a lot of my own personal work focuses on the effects of the atomic bomb on Japan. I chose to represent how Hiroshima and Nagasaki were created, existed, bombed, and then recreated. So I made a house that comes apart into separate pieces and then is reassembled to make a new image, and then can be built back into the house using the instructions that I provided. I just made the house out of foam core and made little details out of painting bits of paper and pieces of wood. I even made my own stucco texture by crushing up gravel, baking it, and then gluing it on the sides and painting it. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm really happy with how the end product on this one came out. For number 2, a non-automated deepfake portrait. I wanted to think about positive uses for AI deepfake technology because, a lot of the ways that we see it being used right now is basically the worst case scenario. As a trans person, I was thinking about how AI deepfakes could be used as gender affirming care. So I transposed my face onto basically what I thought my ideal body would be like, and then painted that and used the color palette from the trans flag. And this is acrylic on wood. I was basically just thinking about how deepfaking could help transpose your face onto a body that better matches your gender identity. For number 3, a view of your room as a ruin, I had a lot of different ideas that I wanted to do for this piece, but I thought it would be a good idea to show some design philosophy because I hadn't done that in any of my other pieces. I basically made a pamphlet for a fictional future museum exhibit that was showcasing children's bedrooms from the 2000s, as if they were relics from an ancient world. I imagined a world hundreds of years from now where these items are now artifacts and have to be restored and displayed in a certain way, and how we would talk about that. I drew pictures, took photographs, I made objects like this moss teddy bear, and then I laid it all out in Illustrator and printed it. For number 4, a sequence of images that represent a person or object moving through several real or metaphorical surfaces. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I chose to do a performance piece for this prompt. That's something I'd never done before, and I'm not a performance artist. I basically bought this dress, I embroidered it, I layered fabric on top of it, and then my performance was me cutting away the fabric, taking out all the embroidery, and then leaving the dress as it had come before. I'll just read what I wrote about the piece to accompany it. This textile and performance piece is a theatrical autopsy of a relationship, moving through the surfaces of grief and loss towards acceptance. Only when the physical surfaces, physical touch / flesh, visual memory / muscle, and written messages / veins, are cut and put away can the blank slate be exposed, ready to be embellished again. The layers are removed in order of their ephemerality, with the final embroidery spelling out the last line of the last message ever exchanged between me and my ex-partner. For number 5, fugitivity. This is the one I struggled with the most because it's just so open-ended, it just being one word. So I decided to go extremely conceptual and make basically a prototype for an object. I'll read the text that I wrote to accompany it. This apparatus was inspired by Fred Moten and Damien M. Sojourner's work on Black fugitivity as it relates to public education. In Sojourner's work, Another Life is Possible, Black Fugitivity in Enclosed Places, he writes, quote, "Black fugitivity often proves contradictory, thereby often reproducing forms of oppression while simultaneously establishing spaces, sometimes momentarily, of freedom. However, at its core, it is an approach by which fugitives disengage from state processes." End quote. The appliance is designed to be worn on top of a school uniform. It is manufactured so the wearer must constantly stay in motion. If they stand straight in a state of rest, the hinge passes a small notch and locks into place, preventing further movement. It is a highly visible piece of equipment that stands against the structure of public education and expresses the essential desire to escape or flee unjust systems, even if the path proves to ultimately veer away from freedom. Number 6, design a board game that addresses a real-world problem. This one's the most difficult for me to summarize quickly because I basically wrote a whole rule book for this. The problem I chose to solve was the difficulty reintegrating into society after incarceration. In re-entry, each player represents one of the 650,000 people who are released from prison annually. Players roll dice to determine their moves and travel clockwise around the board, with each time around the board representing 1 year. As players travel around the board, they will encounter random life events, have the chance to secure employment, and attend mandatory meetings with their parole officer. This game will educate players on the difficulties of re-entry and the need for reform, while also demonstrating that there is a possibility to succeed. Over 50% of the formerly incarcerated are unable to find stable employment within the first year of reintegration into society, and 75% of them are arrested again within 3 years of release. The first player to complete 3 times around the board and end the game with employment and shelter is the winner. The foundation year is really balls to the wall. There's no getting around it. My first day of school, I showed up in my 2D class. She assigned us 25 7x7 pieces that were due the next week. So that really just set the tone for how the rest of the year was going to be like. You have 7 classes, they're all giving you a lot of work. My brutally honest opinion is that if you can't handle the pace of the home test, you probably won't do well at a school like Cooper, and that's not a value judgment or anything. It's just one way that the school works, and it's not for everyone. It's not necessarily the best way to do things. It's just that's the framework that you are working under at Cooper. It's like good to like gauge your interest in that through the home test. That's kind of my transition into talking about what my first semester has been like in general. One thing that I think is really unique to Cooper, and I'm not sure if it's in a good way or a bad way, is everyone's foundation year is completely different depending on what section you're in. So they will split the incoming freshmen into different sections, and you'll have all of your classes with the same group of people, which is great because you form relationships with these people, you get to see each other grow, like that's how you make friends. But you have different professors based on which section you're in, and they're teaching wildly different curriculum. So one 3D professor might have you make installations around the school, and one 3D professor might have you be making a metal cube. They're completely different. So your experience freshman year, even more so than the rest of your time at the school, is really colored by which professors you have. You also might not be excited about the fact that you have to take 2D, 3D, and 4D design. You might think like, I'm just a painter or I'm just a sculptor. Why am I being forced to do all this other stuff? I learned so much about 2D from 3D and vice versa. You know, I came into the school thinking I only wanted to do 3D art, but I really enjoyed my 2D class, and all of the design that I learned from it, I feel like I can apply to my other disciplines. It's also amazing that you learn how to weld, you learn how to use the wood shop. A lot of my friends who go to different art schools didn't get that experience. They don't know how to weld. They never got to use a 7-axis CNC router or an industrial embroidery machine. That's really cool. I would also say make sure you research what programs are offered. We don't have a ceramics program right now. We don't have a textile program right now. There are other programs that have less of a focus that might demote Cooper to a lower spot on your priority list of colleges. Overall, the home test is really difficult, but I do think it's a good way to gauge how well you work under the limitations that Cooper will set for you as a student. And regardless of your admissions decision, you should be really proud of all the work that you put in, because it's a massive achievement. So I wish you all the best, and if you like what you saw and you want to see more, consider liking, subscribing, all that, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.